Starting us off in at number 10, Demon in a Bottle. Superheroes are not perfect. That's something that has always been a philosophy of Marvel's, whose characters' Silver Age claim to fame was their nuances and relatability. So when it was revealed that one of their flagship heroes, Iron Man himself, was struggling with addiction, you can imagine how big of a deal that was. Enter Bottle and a Demon, the 1979 9-issue story arc that occurred in the first volume of the Invincible Iron Man. It follows Stark's drinking problem, something he admits to later on and works to fight against, with his addiction making him his own worst enemy. Alcoholism was the villain in this story arc, as artist Bob Layden put it. It was one of the many downfalls of those who were in the corporate world. I quote, "Alcoholism wasn't talked about all that much really, to be honest with you, especially with kids, in that particular era. But we treated it as we intended to, as the bad guy." Now, despite being a superhero, Tony was still very human, and that is something that is perfectly illustrated in this cover by Layden. Up next at 9, Jason Todd's death. This number is slightly different than most of the others on our list. Rather than focusing specifically on a superhero's secret, we're looking at a secret that was eventually revealed concerning that superhero from a publishing standpoint. We're talking about how the phone-in poll that determined whether or not Jason Todd would live was revealed to have had been rigged by one guy who had programmed his computer to call in every 90 seconds. No joke. So, for context, when Jason Todd was introduced, he was a carbon copy of Dick Grayson. But after Crisis on Infinite Earths, he got a new origin story that made him more of a rebellious street kid who was difficult for Batman to handle. He wasn't as well received as the initial Robin, and at the time, DC wanted to try a new marketing tactic in which fans could call in and vote on a plot point in one of their stories. They decided to go big or go home and made that plot point the death of Jason Todd. Now, little did they know that within that 36-hour voting period, out of the 10,614 votes that they received, with a 72 vote margin determining Jason's fate, might I add, one fan had programmed his computer to dial thumbs down every 90 seconds for 8 hours straight, which literally made the difference between Jason surviving or dying. And yeah, spoiler alert, he died, but he came back, so yeah. And it ain't Magneto's kids. When Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were first introduced to the Marvel Universe, they were villains of sorts. They had teamed up with the Brotherhood of Mutants after Magneto saved them from an angry mob, who were hunting them down because of their powers. Feeling they owed the Master of Magnetism a debt, they joined up with his team, but later left after Magneto became indisposed and the Brotherhood kind of went their separate ways briefly. They would go on to join up with the Avengers. But it was later revealed that Magneto had an ulterior motive in saving them from that angry crowd. Or rather, he was doing it because he had a secret connection to the powerful twins. He was their dad. While this is something that has been retconned back and forth over time, it still makes for one of the X-Men's most enthralling secrets. And some fans to this day still refuse to believe that he is not their daddy dearest. He's their dad, even though it's very murky as to whether or not he is their dad. Gotta love retcons.
Number 7. Martian Manhunter on Supergirl. On the TV show Supergirl, we always knew there was something fishy going on with her boss and head of DEO, Hank Henshaw. I mean, right off the bat, they showed his eyes glowed red. But comic fans just assumed they were teasing him to be Cyborg Superman, like in the comics. But oh boy, were we all wrong. And actually, I don't think we've ever been happier that we were wrong. Turns out that he wasn't Hank Henshaw after all, but John Jones, aka the Martian Manhunter. No one expected that reveal. And on top of that, we got the best live-action version of Martian Manhunter yet. I mean, they completely nailed his look and personality. I still don't know how they managed to pull this off and keep it a secret, but oh man, I'm so happy they did.
And at 6, guess who's possessed? Speaking of that fun story event from our last number, let's move on to a story that was a consequence of it. We were talking about the time that Hal Jordan went mental after Coast City was destroyed, leading into the famous Emerald Twilight story arc. So, Hal loses his crap and he uses his ring to recreate his home city, and bring its residents back to life too. All 7 million of them, including his father. But before he can fully do it, his ring runs out of power. The Guardians of the Universe see him as using his Green Lantern ring for personal gain, and when they try to reprimand him for violating one of the most principal rules of the Green Lantern Corps, Hal gets pissed, goes on a rampage, and further siphons energy from the main power battery on the Guardians' planet in order to finish rebuilding Coast City. The big secret though? Hal was actually possessed by Parallax all along. Parallax, the living embodiment of fear, had been imprisoned away in the core of the main power battery. It had been planning to use HAL for a long time, and the destruction of Coast City was the perfect catalyst to enact its agenda.
Number 5. Reed Richards and the Cosmic Rays. You know Reed had to be on here somewhere, Mr. Fantastic himself. We've got to go to Retcon Land for this one, but Retcon Land is a frequent stop in Comicbookville. So initially the incident that created the Fantastic Four, bombarded by cosmic rays and what have you, was an accident. However, years later, Reed's journal would be discovered, and it would paint a very different picture. In it, he would detail a concern over an increase in superpowered beings and mutants, so he wanted to create his own superpowered team to counteract those he believed would not act with the best of intentions. This is also the source of some of the tension between him and the X-Men. Despite Franklin, his son, being a mutant, Reed hasn't always been their staunchest supporter. So it turned out that Reed had designed the spacecraft to harness the rays so that he and the crew would be exposed. Now Reed would claim he didn't remember writing that, and so began a plot of perhaps it had been his subconscious mind, or was it a fake entry made by Doom or someone else to dissolve the team? The answer's never fully there. Now with all I know about Reed, I think he did, but not on purpose. I wish they had gone with that. It would have been a great parallel for Doom. Brilliant men who couldn't conceive of making a mistake who make a huge one that completely alters their lives. Cause of their own hubris. I'm here for it. Dooms turns him into a despot, and yet Reed gains a family. It would be such a great foundation for their hate for each other.
In at 4, ALYSIA YEOH. ALYSIA YEOH was a character introduced in the New 52, created by Gail Simone during her run on Batgirl. She was Barbara Gordon's roommate who becomes her best friend, and was accepting of Babs' secretiveness right from the get-go, never pressing her about the mysteries surrounding her crime-fighting agenda, which she didn't realize was a crime-fighting agenda at the time. Barbara would eventually tell her the truth about her vigilante ways after Alyssa had walked in on her standing over unconscious members of Joker's gang. Barbara tells her the truth, which prompts Alyssa to later reveal a secret of her own, that she is transgender. Barbara is accepting and loving, and the two become best buds. This was a pretty big deal. Even though there have been a handful of trans characters in comics over the years, this was a character who was stated explicitly as such, and a character who was represented in a positive light. Eventually, DC would let Alyssa get married to her partner, which was the first ever transgender wedding in comics, something that occurred in the aftermath of the controversy surrounding the publisher denying Batwoman that right with her girlfriend, which caused the creative team to walk from the title, inevitably causing its cancellation shortly thereafter.
Number 3. Gwen Stacy and Norman Osborn. This specific story is still really weird. Even years later, during the 2004 storyline since passed, it's revealed that Gwen Stacy actually cheated on Peter with none other than the Green Goblin himself, Norman Osborn. Yep, it's crazy. But this secret is over. Because not only were they together, they had kids. Gabriel and Sarah Stacy. Gwen eventually does go back to Peter, and of course, Norman gets mad, and, well, we all know how that story ends. Spoiler, it ends really badly for Gwen.
In at 2, Snowbirds Don't Fly. After the Golden Age, Oliver Queen, aka Green Arrow, got a bit of a makeover. Initially, he was a carbon copy of Batman's, wealthy millionaire orphan who used technology and strategic planning to become a vigilante. He even had an arrow cave and an arrow car, along with a young ward named Speedy. But when he was reinvented, he lost all of his money and became a liberal advocate, and started going on adventures with other heroes, most famously in the Green Lantern Green Arrow crossover series. Now during that time, Speedy was neglected a whole lot, and it was revealed in 1971 in an issue of that crossover that Ollie and Hal Jordan discovered Speedy had become the victim of drug addiction. He was now a junkie using heroin, and the story became a famous PSA on drug use and addiction as an indiscriminate illness. And last but not least, in at number 1, Bucky lives. You surely heard the comic book saying, no one stays dead except Bucky, Jason Todd, and Uncle Ben. It's something that, for a long time, was known as the Bucky Clause. But then in 2005, Bucky was brought back to life. The character, who had initially been introduced in 1941 as Captain America's child sidekick, had fallen into obscurity alongside Cap after World War II ended in the Golden Age, and was later revealed to have died during a mission at the end of the war. Cap was thrown into the sea and frozen alive, whereas Bucky was presumed dead. He became a symbol of Captain America's fallibility, which made the character more relatable in the Silver Age when he joined up with the Avengers. But, publishing decisions aside, as far as canon is concerned, that wasn't actually what happened. Instead, Bucky didn't die. He was found by a Russian patrol submarine, his body cold preserved, minus his left arm. He was then revived in Moscow, although suffered brain damage and amnesia, and was given a bionic arm, and then turned into the Winter Soldier, a sleeper assassin for the Soviet Union's Department X, programmed to be a ruthless and efficient killer. Eventually, he came face to face with Cap again in 2005, and the story was explosive.
Number 10. 3 Jokers. So this was clearly meant to be a big deal, and maybe it could creep up and bite us still at some point. And some claim, oh, it already happened, the 3 Jokers are the 3 eras. But to that I say, we are more than 3 comic book eras in. So what was this? Well, near the end of the New 52, when Batman got into the Mobius chair, the Deus Ex chair, or the exposition chair, that was omniscient, so you could know pretty much all the things. Well, Batman was testing it out by asking it questions, and he asked it, what's the Joker's true name? And he's all, no, that's not true, that's impossible. But sadly, no one's hand gets cut off. Instead, we go through a whole Darkseid War thing, and after, when Hal comes to see Bruce in the Batcave, because Hal and Bruce were close in the New 52, so Hal's like, what did the chair tell you? They had to force Batman off the chair. It was all very dramatic and silly. I'm never getting out of this chair. So the chair told him that there were 3 Jokers. So there's supposed to be a Batman 3 Jokers comic, and the rumored release was 2019, so they better hurry up. At the time of this recording, it's September of 2019, so tick-tock. This reveal, it's a mileage varies thing, from awesome to wow, that really destroys the lore and connection between Batman and the Joker. So if this happens, it will change everything. But we're a universe reboot in and headed towards another Crisis-style event, so we'll see. Number 9, MAGNETOS, not Zorn. So Grant Morrison's X-Men run, the new X-Men run, is quite a lauded run, but it also had a lot of bizarre moments, and one of them was the big Zorn twist. So Zorn was created for New X-Men Annual 2001, so for this run. He was imprisoned by the Chinese government and forced to wear a mask to contain his black hole of a head. His head's a black hole. The X-Men end up saving him as he is trying to commit suicide by taking off his mask. Long story short, he ends up teaching at the school. His helmet blocks Xavier's telepathy, by the way. This will be important later. So then we have the reveal that haha, Zorn was Magneto all along. Why? Cause haha, so cool, what a twist. Sometimes if you have a good enough rep, you can get away with any twist, but if somebody else did it, they'd be laughed at. This twist would prove to be so perplexing it would ultimately be retconned away in a truly convoluted manner. Now some were like, oh look, there were clues. But there was contention between Morrison and the editors, cause the editors liked Zorn as a character and wanted to keep him around. We're like, there's potential there. Also, this kinda ruins Magneto, but Morrison was like, I do what I want. I had Talia rape Batman because I didn't reread the issue I was basing it off of. So it went ahead, but Marvel would retcon this. But Marvel would retcon the Zorn reveal to create a second Zorn so they could keep using Zorn and Magneto. So where did all this end up? The first Zorn was really Zorn, posing as Magneto, posing as Zorn. Now there are multiple Zorns, so he's around. It changed everything and also showcases how some things are such a mess you have to break your spine to fix them. This twist is polarizing. Some love it and others pull the, oh, you don't like it? You just don't get it. Number 8, Dr. Manhattan and New 52 Superman. So Doomsday Clock is a big DC event that is merging the DC and Watchmen universes. This event has been going on forever now. It started in 2017 and is set to end now in 2020. It is 12 issues. That's ludicrous. So in it, one of the reveals is that Dr. Manhattan has been observing Superman and how he impacts the meta timeline, which is how they refer to the main DC verse. He notices that the timeline shifts around Superman's arrival and how everything can change, but not Superman. So he actually ends up subtly shifting one of these relaunches, resulting in the New 52 timeline Superman, the Superman who is more distant and removed from his humanity. There were also hints that the main goal of this series secretly in the background was to shift responsibility for the New 52 verse from Barry to Dr. Manhattan. But it took too long, so thanks a lot, Barry. So Dr. Manhattan gave the world what some people consider one of the most OC Supermen of all time. Some people love him. Different strokes for different folks.
And at 7, the Kryptonian coma. Yes, friends, we are talking about the death of Superman at this number. Fans of our channel will know how much I disdain that story and the repercussions that it had, but we are not going to talk about that today. Instead, we are looking at one aspect of that storyline, the plot point that caused all of the controversy surrounding that arc, that Superman was actually alive. Specifically, that he possessed the ability to fall into something called a Kryptonian coma. Alright, for context, in 1992, DC launched the Death of Superman story arc, in which Doomsday comes to Earth and he and Superman fight, with them essentially killing one another. Superman appeared dead, he had no vital signs, and by human standards, he had pretty much bit the dust for good. The DC Universe went to mourning. There was a funeral, and in his absence, multiple imposter Supermen started to emerge and stir up some trouble. But then, it was revealed that Superman was actually alive all along, and that his body had slipped into a Kryptonian coma, which was essentially a way for him to revive himself after being severely hurt. Considering it was no longer the Silver Age, let alone the Bronze Age, whipping out new abilities for a character who first debuted in 1938 felt like a cheap stunt, which it kinda was, but that's a rant for another video, friends.
Number 6, TERRA, the Judas contract. We're talking about the original run from the new Teen Titans in the 80s. This TERRA is still one of my faves. She's a ruthless sociopath who hates the Teen Titans. Her time with them doesn't soften or sway her. She's collecting data and ready to take them down. She even has agency in her affair with Deathstroke. Is he a creep for accepting her advances? Yes. She's actually of age, but let's not fall down that rabbit hole. People focus on that, and then they end up focusing on Deathstroke and lose all the glory that is evil TERRA. This revelation shook the team to their core. TERRA was their friend. She was involved in their wedding. She had a thing with Beast Boy. She was deeply involved with them for months. Her betrayal hurt them, and it was a wound that never fully healed. It changed the team's dynamic, and it's still a benchmark for betrayal, even though these days you have a more sympathetic TERRA, which is also a good angle. They're both good. But I'll always have a soft spot for hardcore evil. That and petty evil. Love me some comic book pettiness. Not in real life though. No real life pettiness, please.
Number 5. The Unworthy Thor. During the original Sin storyline, Nick Fury whispered something to Thor, and because of whatever he said, Thor became unworthy to wield Mjolnir. That led to someone else pick up the hammer and become Thor. And Thor then went on to become known as Odin's son and star in his own miniseries, The Unworthy Thor. It was a big deal for comic fans. And a lot were wondering what Fury could have possibly said to make Thor unworthy. Turns out that he only said 3 words. Gorr was right. This, of course, takes us back a few years to another Thor story, and Gorr is referring to Gorr the God Butcher. Gorr believed that all gods had become unworthy because of their actions, and when Thor heard Fury say those words, it became too real for him. And then he became unworthy. And even though it sucks he lost his hammer, I mean, how cool did he look as the unworthy Thor? I mean, he looked badass, and it gave Thor one of his best stories in years.
Number 4, Gwen Stacy and Norman Osborn's secret affair. Who greenlit this? So this was a plot twist reveal that was trying to give more agency to Gwen and her death in 1973. However, just like Batgirl mounting Batman on the rooftop, it went awry. Now, Norman hadn't just killed Gwen to go after Peter. No, he'd been sleeping with her and had gotten her pregnant, and they'd had twins, secret twins. And when he learned that she was gonna take those twins and raise them with Peter, he snapped, killing her. He took the kids, hyper-aged them, and told them it was all Spidey's fault. This way, Spidey could have drama with Gwen's kids. It's just the reveal of it too. The panels of her sleeping with Norman and Peter's question, his takeaway was he still her first? Priorities. Oh, she slept with Norman, but after me. That's alright then. This was poorly received and is often mocked. Nothing like a secret pregnancy plot.
Up next at 3, Damian Wayne exists. Oh. So, there have been plenty of Robins over the years, and as you can see based off of our previous number concerning Jason Todd, their introductions into the DC universe were often a big deal. Damian Wayne is a prime example of that. The son of Bruce and Talia al Ghul, he debuted in Batman issue 655 in a story called Batman and Son, that riffed off of a previous story arc called Son of the Demon. In that initial story, Ra's al Ghul decides that he wants Batman to be his heir, and with his daughter Talia shacking it up with Bruce, it almost makes sense. But it does not happen, because, you know, the whole international terrorist thing. Kind of a deal breaker for Batman. Anywho, in that story, Talia tells Bruce that she's had a miscarriage and their marriage is dissolved. Batman returns to Gotham, but unbeknownst to him, Talia lied about the miscarriage and she has the child, a boy who is then left with an orphanage and is adopted. Flash forward, Batman and Son retcon that slightly, having the boy raised by Talia and the League of Assassins, with Talia later revealing his existence to Bruce and leaving him in the hero's custody.
Number 2, Nick Fury, Original Sin. So Original Sin was a series that was full of the gasp moments and the reveal of secrets, some cooler than others, and a lot of books that felt like, okay, yeah, secret, can we get back to our plots now? Mileage varied on these reveals a lot from comic to comic. But one of the big takeaways, spoilers, was that Nick Fury was a life model duplicate or decoy, and the real Nick Fury has been lurking in the shadows, covertly taking down threats, while his life model duplicate did lots of the wacky, zany stuff we saw. Oh man, did mileage vary on this. But not as much as for our number 1. I think you know what it is. Hail Hydra. Now Hydra Cap. Listen, there are people who love this plot and people who hate it, and the rationales are more complex than people think. So I'm gonna focus on one element that really bothered people, even some people who liked this plot. So before Captain America Steve Rogers, or Steve Rogers Captain America as it was always laid out in the title card, Cap had been old. Then he was de-aged by a sentient cosmic cube, but it turned out that the cube had rewritten Marvel history. So think of the pre-existing timeline as Marvel 616A and post-cosmic cube we live in as Marvel 616B. Now in B it was revealed that Cap was a Hydra agent the whole time, but everything else was the same. So all the adventures that you would see in 616A that had still happened in B, all Hydra Cap, everything. Cap Wolf, Hydra Cap. Cap on meth, Hydra Cap. The resolution of this isn't exactly what people say it is. They like to say, oh no, Hydra Cap was fake. No, he was real. The Captain America who comes back to take him out is fetched from timeline A, but everything else and everyone else is in timeline B. So yeah, he's technically Cap, but not the Cap from that timeline, which superseded the original timeline, making it the prime timeline. And Cap A, hence an alternate, and Cap B, Hydra Cap, the real Cap. Now most people just choose the first explanation, that it was always fake Cap. So Hydra Cap was always fake and they went and got back real Cap, which should have been what they went with from the start. It would have helped. It wouldn't have alleviated the backlash, but it would have helped. Timing and such a huge shift in character center meant that some will always hate this, but some felt it had potential. Maybe it should have been a what if. Hydra Supreme is still around somewhere. Will he be back? Maybe he already is. Dun dun dun.
Number 10, The Winter Soldier. The Winter Soldier story arc is one of the most famous Captain America stories around. Not only was he a formidable foe for Steve physically, but also emotionally, because it turned out that he was none other than his best friend, who he thought was dead, Bucky Barnes. When the secret was revealed, it was a huge deal for the Captain America comics going forward. Now, of course, when the movie came out, hardcore fans knew who the Winter Soldier was, but that didn't take away from how good the movie was. I mean, it was really good. To this day, it is considered to be one of the best MCU films, and it will stay that way forever. Number 9, The Return of Superman. When Superman died at the hands of Doomsday, the comic world was changed forever. Like, forever. No one thought that DC would ever kill off one of their best-selling characters, but they did. Naturally, fans thought this meant that he was gone for good. But there was no way that DC wanted to let their most famous character stay dead forever. And of course they didn't. Superman did return. It was revealed that he didn't actually die, but he was in a Kryptonian coma that protected him and healed him when he was close to death. I mean, fans were happy that he was back, but by doing so, it opened the floodgates to characters dying and coming back forever. Now, when a character dies in the comics, you know that they will most likely return. It's just how the comic world works. You may not know how or why, but you can bet that they will return. And for a lot of fans, it just kind of takes away from when they actually do die. Number 8, Evil Hal Jordan. Okay, so back in the 90s, DC was like, hey, how do we spice up the Green Lantern sales? Maybe you should bring in a new Green Lantern named Kyle Rayner and make Hal Jordan just go a little bit cuckoo. True story. DC wanted to try and boost sales. So, they made Hal go evil, kill, a couple Green Lanterns, and start calling himself Parallax. Eventually, he was stopped, and Hal even became the Spectre at one point. But the damage was done. Hal was basically at the point of no return. Well, that is until Green Lantern Rebirth in 2004, where Jeff Johns essentially saved Hal Jordan. That series revealed that Hal didn't just go evil on his own, but Parallax was actually this evil cosmic entity that corrupted him. It was really well done, and it saved Hal Jordan as a character. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Kyle Rayner, he's an awesome Green Lantern, but I am so happy they redeemed Hal, because I could just never see him going evil like that for, no reason at all.
Number 7, Cyclops is a psychic projection. So Death of X, the arc wherein Cyclops sacrificed himself fighting Black Bolt, and was the catalyst for the mutant inhuman impasse kind of cessation of open hostilities. Well, that's not how Cyclops died at all. This was an illusion created by his partner Emma Frost. In truth, Cyclops caught Mpox, which the internet sardonically referred to as mutant cancer. This was a big reveal, though there were hints, like the fact that Emma and Scott were never seen separately. How did this change everything? Well, because of this false projection, young Cyclops, who is in the timeline as the younger versions of the original X-Men had been brought forward in time, he resented what he was to become and fought against it. This would further damage Cyclops' rep. We're rebooting all of the X-Men though, so we're gonna have to see where all of these changes and twists and turns end up. What will matter in the long run? Exciting times.
Number 6, Barry Allen is SAVITAR. Alright, so this was also a really big deal. I mean, people had so many theories about who SAVITAR was, but when it turned out to be Barry Allen, it really changed the show. It instantly made SAVITAR that much more interesting. Don't get me wrong, he was always a cool and scary villain, but he lacked the emotional connection of Reverse Flash or Zoom. And once the secret was revealed, it instantly made things more interesting. I think the only thing that bugged fans was that they wish they revealed it a little bit sooner in the season so that we could have gotten more of all that evil Barry drama. It really changed the dynamic because it was Barry that they were fighting. A slightly different version of Barry, but one that had all the same memories as the original. So it made for a very interesting dynamic.
And at 5, the deep skills. Moving off the panels and into live action adaptations for this one, let's take a look at a very recent thing. The Boys, the series based off of the comic of the same name. Warning friends, if you have not seen the show, this number is a big spoiler concerning the character played by Chase Crawford, the Deep. That universe is analog to Aquaman. Alright, spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Sexual assault and sexual violence is a big part of The Boys. It translates differently in the series. The comic features a group rape of the new member Starlight to the superhero team called the Seven, whereas the series has the character enduring sexual harassment at the hands of the Deep. The Deep, in this Me Too era, is reprimanded, and after a stunt in which he tries to save a dolphin from a SeaWorld equivalent, it flies through his windshield and then is run over by a truck moments after it hits on the hero, who of course can't speak to it. Lulz. He's sent away to a small Midwestern town and basically loses all of his privileges, all thanks to Starlight speaking out. He then finds himself victimized by a kinky fan who gets him to take off his shirt, something he never does, all to reveal that under his clothes he's got a bunch of gills on his chest, hence why he can breathe underwater. It's his big secret and it's obviously something he's embarrassed by, but the kinky fan forces herself on him, shoving her hands into his gills, causing him a lot of pain without his consent. Essentially, he is raped. But bet you didn't realize he had those gills when he first showed up in the show. That's a secret. Moving on.
Number 4. Tony Stark's parents. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it was always known that Tony's parents died in a car accident. Over the years, we kept getting new little pieces of information about it. In Captain America the Winter Soldier, while Steve and Natasha were talking to Zola, you saw how Howard Stark was one of the ones that Hydra ended up taking out. This led fans to theorize how it happened. But in Captain America Civil War, we found out the mother of all secrets. Bucky was the one that killed Tony Stark's parents. And Cap kind of knew about it. This caused massive ramifications in the MCU. It caused Steve and Tony to stop talking. And Tony tried to kill Bucky, but Cap stepped in and the two had this massive emotional fight. It just goes to show you that one secret can change everything.
Number 3, Ozymandias from the Watchmen. He did it 35 minutes ago. And this secret, his plan, is the entire mystery that is being worked through in Watchmen. The depths of his deception are truly intricate. This plan has been in motion for years. Most of his adult life has been a front for this one moment. He hired someone with a fake job to give them cancer so it would pay off years later. Ozymandias is a complex character in that what he does can be viewed as heinous, but the goal is pure, and the way he goes about it is both villainous and heroic. Heroic in the way that involves massive self-sacrifice. He gives up everything for this, his life, his friends. He's a shell trying to save the world in the only way he thinks will work. But also he doubts, which separates him from a supervillain. After it's all done, he does wonder, was it the right thing? Yeah, I'm gushing, but whatevs. Give me a nuanced Adrian. None of this, oh, he was wrong. Let me decide how I feel, DC. Don't decide for me.
Number 2. Compound V. In the TV show The Boys, superheroes are a well-known thing. They get paid to do what they do. I mean, they're just basically celebrities. They get paid to do what they do. Think of them, they're just kind of like us celebrities. In that world, it was always believed that some people were just lucky and they were born with powers. But oh no, that would just be too easy. You see, Thought International was secretly injecting babies with something called Compound V, which would give them superpowers. And in turn, they would end up working for them and making God a ton of money. Pretty sneaky, right? I mean, they were just injecting babies and paying off people to keep quiet about it. So evil. But hey, it made for some great television. Number 1. Oliver Queen liked killing. Okay, so in season 5 of Arrow, Adrian Chase, aka Prometheus, was torturing Oliver Queen and made him reveal something that would essentially change the show forever. That after years of being trapped on an island and being forced to kill to survive, Oliver actually ended up liking it. Now, he didn't just like killing in general. It kind of turned into an enjoyment of killing bad people. Regardless, it was a big revelation and also shows just how far he has grown as a character. I mean, he stopped killing altogether after season 1 to honor Tommy. And then he kind of went back to it after, sometimes after some of his friends died and he believed that he shouldn't have been holding back. And then it kind of just turned to he would kill if he had to. Now, does this make him a bad person? No. I mean, the guy experienced all sorts of dark and twisted trauma, I mean, that would just make anyone go a bit crazy. The fact that he was able to channel all that, still be a good person, and kind of use it to save people of the city shows you just how good of a person he actually truly is.